Thanks, Minister, for coming in. Minister, I'll do basically short-fire questions the way that I won't hog it too long, because I don't want to go through essays. Minister, this committee, probably 3 meetings ago, got an undertaking from your department that we were going to get a split between Tennants and Clearfell, the tonnages or the cubes. We have also written to your department. Why hasn't that happened?
Minister.
Apologies. I'll pass to Patricia to take that. Sorry, I'm just trying to engage here. Thanks.
I want it fairly quick because we've limited time.
Yes, Deputy. We have put it on the recent dashboard that we sent to the Joint
I'm looking
Oireachtas
at
Committee.
dashboards and I cannot see it.
It's just a line at the end there, Deputy. Thinning licence issued. It's given for the week. 1 for 21.15 hectares. Clearfell licences 20 for 149.64 hectares.
Right.
And if you wanted more specific than that, please let us know.
I think it would be helpful because it's very hard to see it. Second of all, unenclosed land, a report was to come to our committee. Where is that report?
Well, Deputy, yes, that was sent to the committee. It was sent by the Secretary General, not the week before last.
Right. I haven't seen it anyhow.
Thirdly, was, yeah.
Right, we keep going. Thirdly, over the last 2 to 3 years, there's been serious damage through frost. The department has promised to bring in a scheme over the last 2 to 3 years. Where's that scheme?
Look, I don't know off Deputy, so I'll certainly check what the situation is with that. I just don't have the information in front of me at the moment, so I'll follow up with that, if that's okay.
Right, Minister, you said at the JOC meeting that we'd hit 100 a week, and we did for June. Why are we down to 20 or 30 licences now? I've gone through 4 weeks in July. We have something like 112 licences in July. What's the reason?
The reason, Deputy, for this was the introduction of an SI from the Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government, which introduced a second 30-day public consultation period. It wasn't just for forestry applications, but any planning, if you like, application that requires an appropriate assessment.
So are you saying to me, right, and I take your point on the SI, are you saying to me that we've gone from 100 down to 20 or 30? Are you saying to me that 80% of them, 80% of the applications now are going in for screening for the simple reason through this SI, when you look at the figures that has happened, for the simple reason they are because of the Habitats Directive or because they are near a site of importance?
Yeah, that is the case, about 80%.
So 80% of all our fires is going into screening now. We have to be clear on that. Is that correct?
Yeah,
right.
That is the case.
Right. So are we going to hit the 4,500 licences that you talk about?
That is still the intention. We certainly, as you saw from the dashboard in June, we got up to, I think the first week in June, sorry, we were up to, or July, apologies, we ended up with 115 licences, and the expected numbers were to be higher than that with the SI aside, but we do hope to get back up to speed from the middle of August, and the average would be much higher than that. Okay,
you stated that Coillte had enough of licences, complete licences for 2021 at a JOC meeting. Why are we still concentrating on Coillte licences?
Coillte are the main suppliers to the sawmill sector in Ireland, because the sawmill owners need certainty.
We stated that we had enough licences for 2021.
For 2021, yeah, we're halfway through 2021 at the moment. So if you get the chance to visit any sawmill owner who is in receipt of wood through Coillte, they need that certainty for their markets for next year and the following year.
On a regular basis, but what I'm asking is, and is it correct in saying, and I'm putting it to you as Minister, when I'm talking to your department internally, I am hearing that Coillte licences are probably more straightforward, and that the push will be put, and I'm marking the card here now, the push will be put over the next few months to get enough Coillte licences out to tick the box that we hit 4,500. Is that correct? Is that the method now within the department?
Well, in June, we issued the highest number of private felling licences for the last 5 years. So not to date. And look, the Coillte licences are dealt with in a different way to the private licences. Equally, both are as robust a way of dealing with them. But the Coillte licences tend to come in a larger batch, which facilitates our department to look at any, collaboration between different licences in different areas. And the private licences tend to come in, singularly from individual owners.
What's your guidance?
So far, just this deputy, so far this year, we've issued 633 felling licences for private owners and 596 for Coillte. So in fact, it's more private than Coillte.
A question for you. Mr. Dunn stated with the industry meeting there lately that they do not need an NIS. What's your guidance on an NIS? Do you need it or do you not?
I'll pass you there to Kevin, please.
Hello and good afternoon. Yes, Deputy, the issue with the NIS is a very important part of the process and procedure, and we have two options. One is we can look for an NIS, ask the applicant to submit an NIS, or secondly, under a recent SI amendment to the forest regulations, we can do an AAR, an appropriate assessment report internally. So we have both options, and what we
but all I'm asking is, do we need it or do we not?
The department may always ask for an NIS, but we find that it's more
efficient. Is it recommended?
Well, it's more efficient for us to do an appropriate assessment report for felling and for roading. But we're not ruling out that we might ask for an NIS in relation to felling or roading, but generally, if we get, for example, felling a good quality harvest plan and for roading a good quality biomap and specs for the road, that may allow us to have enough information to do the appropriate assessment report internally.
All right. Okay. I want to move on because I have a few questions. On the 7th of July, your department issued a circular 1021. Point 2 of that circular, all relevant documentation to basically move to that you could look at the whole lot. When you went to that yesterday, nothing came up. It brought you back again to the beginning. Why isn't that up online?
What circular was that in relation to? Sorry, Deputy.
1021, it's on that you can look at the licenses and all that. 1021 on the 7th of July and point 2 of that circular. You can look at the circular. It's not up online. I've gone through it yesterday with the person in the industry and it didn't bring me to end and it brought me back again to the beginning. You might take note of it because I'm not going to hold the meeting up with it because I have more questions. Minister, 8,000 hectares is the target each year. We have 2,722, I think, approximately this year. Are you concerned with what you as a minister and previous ministers has commissioned to 8,000 hectares not being adhered to?
Look, this year, we're not going to hit that target. I think that's clear to see. Last year we didn't, but certainly it is something we absolutely have to start meeting. And I think you might have seen from my opening statement that we are, looking at, giving a boost to the native woodland creation scheme to encourage, more farmers in on that, particularly for riparian planting. And at the end of the day, everything above 0.01 of a hectare will account for our afforestation. So if we can, whatever we can do to encourage farmers, and I know it's a difficult time at the moment, and there's not a huge appetite for different reasons. But look, that's certainly going to be something that we will address.
Okay.
And looking even at the future vision for forestry is going to have to address that also.
Minister, you talked about Project Woodland being something that's going to solve things. In my opinion, Project Woodland is a thing for down the road that's going to solve things. At the moment, we have contractors going bust. In Project Woodland, basically, it was being looked at, and one of the recommendations to a requirement that they were going to look at basically giving a grant for doing an NIS and that was going to be looked at for legal advice. I think no one can contradict me in this. It is going out for legal advice on state aid and all that for, I think it's actually up on the web or on the pages at the moment on procurement, that you basically tender for the 3rd of September. Now, I can just tell you, Minister, that whatever your department are at, that the industry got that report last week, and they have got from probably the same crowds that you get the legal advice from. They have already got the legal advice. I'm not going to name names, but they have done that in less than a week. From what I'm reading on the procurement process, that it'll be the 3rd of September before we'll have someone appointed. When do we expect to have basically the evidence got or whatever, and when do we expect to have a scheme in place? Is this next year, or is it within the next month or 2 months? Because what I am reading at the moment, no more than what Project Woodland is, and I'm not knocking it, this is for next year. It's not for this year. And do you realise that the crisis is this year?
Thanks, Deputy. Look, Project Woodland was really a framework for developing the kind of consensus that we need. But it is, I mean, one of the work streams is entirely focused on the backlog, so it isn't just for something down the line.
I'm talking about in the line of where they are looking at giving basically money to somebody that wants to do an NIS or appropriate assessment, and they are looking at the state aid. Was it state aid, or was there complications?
Yeah, that's something that's come from a recommendation from one of the work groups, and look, that's something we need to tease out. We haven't looked at that specifically. The project board. The regulatory.
If someone tells you that it's not state aid, that everything is good to go, when will this be delivered? Will it be next year?
We are waiting for the regulatory and legal review has been tendered for. That's a fairly substantial piece of work that actually was one of this committee's recommendations, which we have are going with, and the tender went out, I think, at the end of last week or last week.
The industry minister was able to get it in 1 week from probably the same people.
That's a separate issue. I think what you're referring to would be some legal advice, which varies depending on who you speak with. So this is a far greater in-depth analysis to assess: are we doing things correctly? Are we overdoing things? Are we underdoing things? And it will be done independently. So it's not just a planner, or it'll require planning.
We don't know when it's going to.
No, the tender is out, and look, it's going to be, I would say, a matter of months before that. I would like to see it by the end of the year.
Do you have any intention to bring in legislation to maybe take roads or take tenants out of the whole system?
That will be part of the regulatory review, and as I said, we would hope to have that completed by the end of the year.
Minister, I'm going to put it to you at the moment, and I'm talking to the people inside in your department. Do you admit, or do you think, that there's a HR issue within the department between senior management and basically middle management? Do you think that there's any problem HR-wise?
No, I don't think there's any problem HR-wise. I think one of the work streams of Project Woodland is looking at the organisation of the department and you know where how that works, and I think that will be very useful work and might help us, if you like, make progress within the organisation more efficient and make sure that we are doing things correctly.
You don't think you have a HR issue, no?
No, I don't think
you don't think that inspectors have lost confidence in senior management, do you?
Well, I think if we are looking at any organisational structures within the department, then that will come out with the works and the recommendations of that work stream. So I think we'll wait to see what they come out with.
If we look at and this is the final question because I want to let others in. If we look at the performance where every TD, in fairness, backed you when you were bringing in your legislation and it was going to be the bullet to solve everything less back end. How would you gauge yourself? Would you give yourself until Christmas to have this turned around? If you hadn't it turned around, would you be reviewing yourself and saying, my God, I got into something that I probably need to give to someone else? Do you think the Taoiseach or the Taoiseach needs to get involved? Or do you realise that there is contractors that have lost machinery to the bank because of that your department, because of lack of licences? Do you realise that there are farmers out there that will never plant now because they have moved on where they applied for it and they were waiting 3 and 4 years. Do you realise that what the feeling on the ground in relation to forestry is, that it's a dirty word out there at the moment? When would you consider that your situation would be untenable?
The legislation you're referring to at the end of last year, when I started my role here, the single greatest threat to the forestry sector was the backlog in the appeals. And I introduced legislation faster than some would have liked, without perhaps the pre-legislative scrutiny that some would have liked. We introduced that, and that is the legislation you're referring to, which has worked incredibly well. The backlogs in the appeals are essentially cleared now. We have a fully functioning, efficient appeals process now that works, and that was the crisis when I started. The backlog in the ecology, which is, I suppose, the current issue, has been addressed. It's not absolutely, clearly not solved, but we have changed. We have made systems improvements. We have, recruited increased resources, and that is being dealt with, as you can see from the figures in June. Notwithstanding the SI, which has kicked in unbeknownst to us really at the time, we will be back up to the June and beyond June figures expected by the middle of August. And we do absolutely intend to ramp up the averages to get the licences issued as promised, and we do intend to hit 4,500 licences before the end of the year.
But I'm pushing it on record here now, Minister. The intention I'm hearing from your department is that there will be Coillte licences to get them out fast, to tick that box. That doesn't solve the afforestation.
Coillte licences, as I said earlier, are issued.
How are you going to solve the planting situation? Do you realise the situation in planting at the moment in Ireland?
Absolutely, and I'm sure I get the same representations as many of you do. I perhaps even get more so being in the position I'm in. And the planting is an issue. I agree with you in terms of confidence in the sector with farmers. I think there's pressure not only because of the licence issue, there's also pressure from other land uses on farmers as well. So the desire to plant forestry is not as good as it should be. I've met recently with the Finnish Agriculture Minister, Ambassador in Finland has a totally different attitude towards forestry, and to be honest, in Finland you're not considered a farmer unless you have trees. And I think there's it is going to be I think a slow process to get that confidence back in our farmers to plant, but
Okay,
that's
Minister,
what we need to do.
Thanks for your comment. I'm going to let somebody else in, but what I'm going to say to you is forestry, when you talk to farming community, is a dirty word now, because they've been 3 or 4 years waiting with your department. They were willing to do it. They were let down badly. Contractors have been let down. We have now nurseries in danger of closing, and all because of this department not functioning. And I think that a hard look needs to be taken by a lot of people at their positions. Thank you very much, Chairman, for allowing me and to the rest of the members.
Okay. Deputy